Yes, good day, class. I welcome you to today's segment. We are going to be talking about theories of evolution. It's one of the key areas of examination in grade 12, paper 2. So without wasting any time, we are just going to be discussing, or let me just bring to you what we are going to be talking about today. It's the theory of evolution by natural selection, which is sometimes called Darwinism. And of course, we are going to look at Lamarck's theory and also gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. I have got so nice board pictures that I've pasted there on our on this board here. So please just look forward to it. Just watch the video to the end. Punctuated equilibrium and gradualism theories are also shown in this presentation. Just scroll through and check, be patient with it. You'll see what I'm talking about. So let's quickly just go into this work of today. Darwinism is a theory that explains the evolution of new species through natural selection. I'm sure that I already presented to you that this Darwinism theory is also called evolution by what? By natural selection. By natural selection. I'm sure you know that when we are referring to natural selection, it is survival of the fittest. The fittest organisms are the ones that can survive. So Darwin, he actually took a research which actually has to be done from 1809, which was done from 1809 to 1882, which was a 5-year voyage on the ship, in which he was just pushing unpaid work, studying the variation of plants and animals across his trip. So this theory, it was actually done by Charles Darwin. So check here now. Without wasting any time, we want to go and look into uh, the Darwin theory's principles. How did this theory come to existence? Darwin collected a range of specimens, like specimens are just samples that he collected. He also kept detailed notes of his observation. There were some notes which were kept in terms of the observations of plants, animals, and also the distribution, geography, the location of these various organisms across the countries that he moved. So, for example, Darwin observed that the finches of the Galapagos Island, I'm sure that is one of the key examples that is shown or that we refer to when we look at Darwin's theory. The Galapagos Island birds, the finches birds, which showed great variation in their beaks. The beaks, the mouth, they were quite varied. There was quite a great deal of variation on these Galapagos birds. So in 1837, Darwin started keeping detailed notes to support his ideas of evolution of the various species that he was working on. In 1844, he wrote out his statement of his theory of evolution by natural selection, which was quite big. That was 213 to 231 pages. And then uh, the observations on which the Darwin theory of evolution by natural selection, what was it about? The Darwin theory of evolution is based on 5 main observations. There are 5 main observations under which the theory of natural selection was based on, and assumptions upon them as well. So, in other words, these can also be referred as the principles of Darwin's theory, the principles of the theory of Darwin's theory. So this theory was based on variation. There is variation in appearance and abilities of organisms within every species organisms in every species, they do not look the same. The organisms have got different capabilities or different strength or different abilities, which is actually caused because of their genetic makeup. So in this theory, Darwin accepted and believed that or acknowledged that there is great variation that exists among organisms of the same species. And then offsprings, the product of reproduction, which we are saying the species produce a large number of offsprings, but they do not all survive. In a natural habitat or in a natural ecosystem, organisms, they reproduce. When reproduction takes place in a natural ecosystem, there is nothing to do with controlling of the population, which is done by the wild animals. So in this theory, he accepted and acknowledged that there were quite a lot of offspring that were produced. Large number of offspring were produced. However, some of them could not survive or few survived, others died, which is also called natural selection. In this respect, it is otherwise because of concept to do with ecosystem interdependence. It can be because of any other reason that has to do with the drought or environmental factors. Also, competition also interplayed in this. Competition, organisms compete for limited resources, such as what competition exists also, which we are saying organisms compete for limited resources, such as what, such as food. In a natural ecosystems, organisms naturally compete. Competition does occur. Let's look in a, if we can just look at on a wood on a food web, there is always competition that exists among its organisms, either on the food that they are eating. It can also be competition on the space that they are living in, the habitat. It can be competition even for their mates in terms of the courtship and so forth. So competition exists as one of the main principles under which the theory was based on. Genetics, again, organisms pass genetic traits to their offsprings. As we can refer back from our first uh, topic in life science in grade 12, I'm sure that genetics cannot be underplayed, cannot be nullified, that organisms, they pass on their genes, they pass on their traits to their young ones, to their offsprings through the genes. So genetics played or is quite accepted and acknowledged in influencing the appearances of organisms in Darwin's theory. And eventually there is also the principle of natural selection. Natural selection, those organisms with the most beneficial traits are likely to survive and reproduce in a natural ecosystem or in an environment. Organisms which has got the most favorable qualities for them to survive, they do survive. Those which cannot, they do die. So therefore, it's the same system which is also referred to when he identified the extinct and the extant species. The extinct, the ones which are no longer living, and then the extant, the ones which are living. So natural selection identifies those which are still living, and therefore the ones which are still living are able to pass on their characteristics to what? To the next generation, and then a transition of organisms or a movement or evolution therefore takes place. These are the principles: variation, offsprings, competition, genetics, and natural selection. They do form the basis of Darwin's theory. So we can explain this theory, the theory of Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. Explain Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. Darwin explains his theory of evolution by natural selection as follows. So he identified that plants and animals generally produce large number of offsprings. Large number of offsprings are produced in plants and animals. The offsprings of plants and animals of the same species show a great deal of variation. The organisms or the offsprings of these plants and animals, they show a great deal of what? Of variation. And then the offsprings produced to compete with each other for available resources. In this regard, class, can we understand and acknowledge that let's look, for example, animals such as those ones which are mammals, like for example, if we look into animals that produce more than one offspring at a given time, they always compete for what? For food. For example, when they are still breastfeeding, they would need to fight for the space to feed. So natural selection does take place. Competition does exist in organisms when they are in their natural environment. Competition for resources is inevitable. Only those individuals with favorable characteristics enabling them to compete successfully for resources or adapt to changing environmental conditions will survive. So because of competition and the strength of the various organisms in the ecosystem, in the natural environment, the ones which has got the best suitable qualities would be able or survive, whereas those ones which have got weak or which are weak, they do die. So in this respect, what is being acknowledged in this theory is that competition exists and the strong organisms, they do survive. Darwin called this theory then that is natural selection, like I said in the first place. In the next generation, there would be a large proportion of individuals with what? With favorable characteristics, which is noted from the principle that the strong organisms, they survive. As they survive, they pass on they are able to reproduce on their own. So reproduction occurs or takes place amongst individuals or organisms which have got the favorable characteristics. So the favorable characteristics, the genes that are favorable are passed on from the previous generation to the next generation, enabling that the next generation of organisms would have the favorable characteristics. As natural selection occurs from generation to generation, therefore a continual gradual change in population leading to evolution of new species takes place. As natural selection takes place from generation to generation, what is happening here is that the strongest organisms or the fittest organisms are being able to survive, are being able to reproduce. So in this regard, what is happening is that there is continual and gradual change in population that would lead to evolution of new species. Hence, in the next generations of population to come, we no longer have the weakest organisms. We only have organisms that have adapted or that have got the favorable characteristics which can enable them to survive within the habitat or the natural ecosystem that is being shown there. So there is also a schematic diagram that has been used or that is attached on the board there. Parents plants or animals that are shown there, and then we have got reproduction, large number and variety of offspring produced, as we can see there, and then natural selection as a result of competition for resources and or by the changing environment. We are seeing there, as you can see here, we are saying these symbols which are shown in this question, in this box here, this box, the box here, it is marking the qualities of the individuals that are being produced from this population or from these parents. So we have got some which have got this type, which are looking like that. We have got others which are looking like this one. We have got others which are looking like we also have others which are looking like this one. So in this regard, what is being shown is that there is a great deal of variation, or there is qualities, there is a large number of organisms which vary with a variety of characteristics which is amongst them. So natural selection as a result of competition would take place, and then also as a result of the changing environment. If you can look in this, let me point it to say number one. If we compare it to the next generation, which is generation number 2, we can see that we no longer have some of the organisms that were there. If you can look here, for example, I can show it by the green mark here, which is showing to say we have got this type of organism there, which is something like, we have got this type of organism which is appearing on population 1. But if we look in population 2 or generation 2, this is we no longer have something like that. We also have organisms which are like this, as we can see in generation 1, but we no longer have such individuals in generation 2. And again, we had many of organisms which were also, we also have many of them which were like this, which were a circle and a dot there. But these also, they get extinct. They get extinct. We know we don't see them in generation, in second generation. And then the population of the other one is this one, which is also increasing. It keeps on what? It keeps on increasing, which eventually comes to dominate continual natural selection, which is shown in generation 3. Generation 3 identifies that we only have a population of individuals which are uh, which are like this symbol that I'm drawing here. We only have this population species. This is the only population species that is appearing in our last generation, or in our current population of this population species. As you can see, we have got this Y-like population. It actually got extinct also when we got there. Y-like population there, it got finished. We don't have it. It actually extincted also, as you can see. It extinct also in this. We don't have it also as we go to the next generation. So this is just a simple representation of natural selection, or evolution by natural selection, which we are saying organisms with favorable characteristics, they can be able to what? To survive. Those with weak characteristics or unfavorable characteristics, they die, resulting in the best gene being passed on from generation to generation, because we have got intra-reproduction that is taking place by means of what? Of strong genes that are being shared amongst the organisms of the same species that are strong in this respect. So Darwin used different species of finches. He used different species of finches he found on the Galapagos Islands. I'm sure that we have talked about that. An example of how theory of evolution by natural selection worked. And he observed that there were more than a dozen species of finches there. There were more than 100,000 species of finches on the islands. All of them had different types of beaks. Some had large beaks. That is variation. The variation is shown by the types of beaks that were found on the different types of the birds that were found there. I'm saying we have got some with large beaks, which is one, like those which are of the parrot, and then well, some had small beaks, and then fine beaks as well is number 3. So like those of the finch are the chaffinch. He made the assumption that one original species, one original species, probably from the South American mainland, it become modified for eating different types of foods. Some were modified for eating insects. The type of the beak was also defining the type of the food the organ, I mean, these birds were eating. Some eating also seeds. Some others become modified for eating leaves, while others became modified for eating buds. So depending on the type of the food the birds were eating, it affected it also defined the existence of that population of those ones. The ones which has got the beak, which can feed on the available food within these islands, could continue surviving, and then the ones which has got the beak, which could not feed on the available food, also died and became extinct. So we want to look at the table that shows the differences between Lamarck's theory and Darwin's theory. Let's look in this. This presentation, I quickly just gave a table, like I said before, that we have got Darwin's theory and Lamarck's theory, which can be comparatively analyzed. Variation in terms of Darwin's theory. Let's quickly look on Lamarck's theory. Variation in offspring brought about by individuals in the population changing. According to this Lamarck's theory, Lamarck is identifying that variation in the population or in offspring is brought about by individuals in the population changing. However, Darwin's theory is saying Darwin's theory is saying offspring showed variation from the moment of production. So from the process or from the time of fertilization, when the individuals are being formed according to Darwin's theory, they already shows variation, they already showed variation. So according to Lamarck, variation is brought about by individuals in the population changing. Organisms were brought up being the same. Here we are saying organisms were the same, but they changed. According to Lamarck, organisms changed after birth. Change occurred later. It occurred later in life. It occurred later. And then, according to Darwin, organisms, they had variation from the moment of birth, of reproduction, or from their moment of production. And then change brought about because individuals in the population wanted to change. Deterministic theory, which I was saying before again in one other presentation that I did. I was saying, please refer to it again, the theories of evolution in the previous presentations. According to Darwin's Lamarck's theory, Lamarck is also quite known as deterministic theory. It's also quite known as what? Deterministic theory. What it means is that in Lamarck's theory, Lamarck said identified organisms changing as a requirement that they desire. Organisms are changing because they desire to change. However, change as a result of environmental factors working randomly on the population in according to Darwin's theory. Organisms, they change. I'm saying change is taking place as a result of environmental factors which are randomly selecting the population in terms of Darwin's theory. But in terms of Lamarck, organisms are changing. They desire, they think of changing. Hence, it is called a deterministic theory in terms of Lamarck's theory. And then change brought about by individuals in the population adapting to the environment in terms of Lamarck's theory. And then Darwin identifies that change brought by nature selecting. Nature is the one that is selecting those are best suited for what? For the environment, for them to survive. And then individuals in the population change in terms of Lamarck's theory. Number three, next point, individuals in the population change. Individuals change. Individuals change class in terms of Lamarck's theory. However, according to Darwin's theory, population as a whole change. Population as a whole change. And then changes brought about by adapting to the environment are inherited from parents to offsprings. In this case, Lamarck is saying acquired characteristics are passed on from generation to generation. Are passed on from generation to generation. So what I'm saying is that acquired characteristics, these are characteristics that are, we are saying what are acquired characteristics? Acquired characteristics these are characteristics that are what? That are obtained during a lifetime. Organisms are, we are saying characteristics gained over a lifetime. Are called acquired characteristics. However, what we need to understand is that acquired characteristics class cannot be passed on from generation to generation. Acquired characteristics cannot be passed on from generation to generation because we are saying they are not contained in the genes. They are not contained in the what? In the sex cells. The sex cells they contain the nucleus that is having the genes, the paternal and the maternal chromosomes, which I'm saying they do have, or the nucleuses of these sperm cells and egg cells are the ones that have got characteristics that can be passed from generation to generation. Hence, we can see now that characteristics are passed on from generation to generation because they enable the individual to what? To survive, which are what? Which are passed from what? From which are passed from what? From the chromosomes. The characteristics that are passed on, these are genetically passed on from generation to generation. This is one thing that we must understand in regards to this differentiation of the theories of Lamarck and Charles Darwin. So characteristics that are acquired class cannot be passed on from generation to generation. Only characteristics which are genetically, we are saying, which are contained in the genes are the ones that are to be passed on from generation to generation. At the same time, they are the characteristics which are have got benefit, which are enabling the organism to survive in the environment. Yes, they can be passed on because the organism is what? Is survived. Let's just look in the next item. Darwin's theory, Lamarck's theory, the Lamarckism is the idea that organism can pass on characteristics that organism that it acquired during its lifetime. So I said acquired characteristics that are acquired characteristics are characteristics that an organism is got, is achieved during its lifetime to the offspring, and then it is named after the French biologist Jean Pasteur, which is called Lamarck, which was postulated or posted in what 1744 and this 1829. Also take note, in multiple choice questions we do have questions which will be asked to identify the years when the theory was published. Jane Pasteur, the Lamarck theory, tried to explain how animals changed over time by means of what he called laws, the laws that he identified. These laws also we can define them as what? As his principles of the definition of his theory. So one, according to his law, according to the law of use and disuse, there's a law which is principle one, the law of use and disuse. Organisms become modified or adapted according to how frequently they were used. Organs of different animals, they become modified. They become modified or adapted according to how frequently they were used. That is a law of use and disuse. If they were used more frequently, they become bigger, stronger, and changed so that it could work better. And on the other hand, if the organ was not used, if the organ was disused, it became smaller until it totally disappeared. So according to Lamarck's theory, organisms, they do have qualities that become more stronger, better developed, more bigger as a result of how frequently they are used. So those organs which are not frequently used will disappear. So what I'm saying is that the theory, it is based on one principle, the law of use and disuse. Will come to criticism or to analysis of the theory of the law as we go. And then we have got the law of inheritance of modified or acquired characteristics. Inheritance of acquired characteristics. The modifications brought about by the frequency of use or disuse were able to be transmitted to their offsprings. I'm not sure. I want to bring it to your attention, class. You understand genetics very well. You understand inheritance quite clear. I'm saying the law of inheritance of acquired characteristics, which we say that characteristics that an organism gained during its lifetime, can they be passed on from generation to generation? That cannot be possible. Acquired characteristics cannot be passed on from generation to generation because they are not contained in the genes. The genes which carries the characteristics that are passed on from generation to generation are passed on as a result of what? Of the chromosomes which are contained in the what? In the gametes of organisms. So acquired characteristics cannot be found in the gametes, hence cannot be passed on from generation to generation. So in other words, Lamarck felt that animals deliberately made changes to become adapted to their environment, which we said in the first place there that Lamarck identifies, or his theory is called the deterministic theory, where organisms define how they want to appear, how they want to look like, how they want to behave and whatsoever. However, what we are saying is that the nucleus of a cell contains the genes, it contains the chromosomes which affect the functioning, the structure, and the appearance of an organism, which is opposite from what Lamarck was presenting. These structural changes were then handed down from generation to generation, which is also not correct. Acquired characteristics cannot be passed on from generation to generation class. Uh, so let's just look into this, the giraffes, which was also an example of the organism which Lamarck used to explain his theory. Lamarck gave the following examples of how this theory worked. The long legs of the heroine were were the result of its effort to stretch, lengthen them in order to adapt to a what habitat. The long neck of the giraffe became about because it wanted to feed on the what? On the treetops where it could have less competition from other herbivores. So according to Lamarck's theory, he's saying that all giraffes were born with short necks, but due to competition, they had to stretch their legs, they had to stretch their necks, and then because the necks and the legs were frequently stretched, therefore they become longer, which is something that is also opposite and cannot happen. The legs of the snake disappeared because it did not use them in its grinding movement. Also, its body became thin and long to allow it to crawl through narrow spaces. That is an example of another organism that Lamarck used. So what we are saying is that according to Lamarck's theory, organisms became what they are as a result of what? As a result of a desire, as a result of the competition which they were trying to escape. So uh, this has got to fall through a lot of criticism, inheritance of acquired characteristics, and also law of use and disuse. It suffered rejection because the theory lacked enough evidence, which we are saying organisms evolved not because they want to evolve. The reasons why Lamarck's theory was rejected. The Lamarck's theory was rejected because organisms evolved not because they want to evolve. Instead, these changes took place randomly in response to the environment. That is why the theory was rejected. Deterministic. It was too deterministic, identifying that organisms would change because they want to change. There is little evidence to support Lamarck's idea that changes brought about by adapting to environment are inherited from what? From parents to offsprings. That is to say what? Acquired characteristics cannot be inherited, cannot be inherited. That is also the reason why the theory was rejected. It was rejected because acquired characteristics cannot be inherited. And again, we said it also theory was too deterministic. Was too deterministic. which we are saying organisms do not change. Organisms do not change. They do not change because they want to change. However, changes are brought out by environment. That is one thing that we must understand. So Darwin's theory, Lamarck's theory, it suffered criticism because organisms, they do not change as a result of what they want, but it is because of environmental competition. It is because of natural selection. The last other two pieces of evolution that I would want you to look at, or that the class must understand, is punctuated equilibrium. Punctuated equilibrium and also the gradualism. So note that according to Darwin's theory, evolution occurs gradually and uniformly over long periods of time. Therefore, Darwin's theory is sometimes referred to as what is referred to as phyletic gradualism or simply gradualism. Darwin's theory can also be defined as what? As gradualism. In 1979, in 1972, paleontologists Niels Eldredge and Stephen Jay Gould published their theory called punctuated equilibrium. According to this theory, most species do not undergo any change for long periods of time. Punctuated equilibrium. I'm sure if you can check recently, so the question was there, which was asking about punctuated equilibrium, and then it wanted you to know the graph that was given there to explain punctuated equilibrium, and then also know who are those people who also published the theory. So it was published by Stephen Jay, also by who? By Eldredge Niels. So in 1972 class. So what is happening there is that species do not undergo any change for long periods of time. Then suddenly the species undergo rapid change over a short period of time, over a short period of geological time, resulting in new species. That is the punctuated equilibrium. If you can look, what is happening is that here is the graph that explains punctuated equilibrium. You can see we are saying this is, we can name them to say 1, 2, 3, and then 4 as different generations that are shown there. So what you are supposed to understand is that in terms of punctuated equilibrium, one thing which is taking place there is that there is no change, or organisms that do not undergo any change for long periods of time. Organisms they do not undergo change for long periods of time, then suddenly the species undergo rapid change over a short period of time, resulting in new species. So over long periods of time, there is no change that is taking place, which we are seeing that we have got this space here from maybe millions of years, which are there from here to from on this graph that we are having there. There is millions of years where there is no change. Suddenly there is a change. There is a change. There's long period. Millions of years where there is no change, and then suddenly the species undergo rapid change over a short period of geological time that will result in what? In new species. So what is taking place there is that we can have such period of time to say this whole period of time there was no change. Organisms do not undergo any change over long periods of time. Suddenly, over a short period of time, there is a change which will result into a new species. So from there, from A to what? To C or to B, there was no, you see the space that is there. Long period of time where there was no change, and then suddenly there were some changes that resulted in what? In new species, which we are saying this is what? punctuated equilibrium. Punctuated what? Equilibrium, which is being illustrated in this respect. So this can also be explained. The punctuated equilibrium can also be explained as follows. One, we are saying, how did the tigers get their stripes? No one knows for sure. However, we can explain it using the punctuated equilibrium and also by gradualism according to the theories of punctuated equilibrium. This theory here, all of it, it is explained under what? Under punctuated equilibrium class. A long time ago, there were a lot of tiger-like animals, but without stripes. Then suddenly a mutation occurred. Mutation occurred in a few of the animals, causing large change. They were born with the stripes. The stripes help the tigers to what? To camouflage or to take cover. Camouflaging to be able to not to be spotted by what? By their enemies. More of the striped tigers survived than the unstriped one. The striped tigers lived to reproduce, and their striped offspring also did well. Over only a few generations, the whole population born was striped. So the striped tiger, it managed to what? To camouflage, and then it could survive because it was also hiding. It was hiding from the what? From the predators. It was hiding from people. It was hiding from any other organisms or animals that could kill it. So punctuated equilibrium identifies that over long periods of time, there is no change. Suddenly changes happens rapidly. Changes happens rapidly over a short period of time. That would result in what? In new species. That is punctuated equilibrium. And then we have got gradualism. Gradualism also explains that in terms of gradualism, it is also another theory of evolution that we must understand, the gradualism theory. What it identifies is that it is gradualism is also a model of evolution. Gradualism is also a model of evolution that can also explain evolution as follows. At first, the entire population of tiger was unstriped. It was unstriped in terms of what? In terms of gradualism. In terms of punctuated equilibrium, the whole population, if you can look in here, more of the tigers born than if you can look in this, they were born striped. In punctuated equilibrium, they were born with stripes. They were born with stripes. But if we look in gradualism, they were born without stripes. They were born without. They were born with. You understand? So if you can look in that, it can identify the variation that is taking place between gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. So a few of the tigers developed marks over their fur as a result of mutation. Mutation took place in both scenarios. Since these marks helped in camouflaging them, more individuals with stripes with marks on them survived than those without stripes, without marks. Over long periods of time, and more individuals with marks survived from generation to generation. At the same time, the marks gradually become clear stripes, and then eventually the entire population of tiger-like animals become striped in terms of gradualism. So at first, they did not have stripes. They managed to have stripes as a result of mutation, which the stripes or the marks, they started to have marks which were passed on from generation to generation, and then the marks became clear, and then they become stripes. So this is also, in this respect, we have got a graph that is also a model that is also used to illustrate gradualism. So gradualism, as you can see, evolution is taking place microscopically. As you can see, the time periods that are there is short. Over a short period of time, there are changes which sometimes are taking place, which might be unnoticeable, but they are so gradual or also microscopic. So what happens there is that very little change may take place over hundreds or thousands of years. Very little change takes place. Very little change. Very little change takes place. Very little change take place. Take place over hundreds of years. Take place over hundreds of years. Very little change takes place over hundreds of years. And then, as a result of that, what happens is that this would cause also gaps in the fossils. And then a relatively sudden change in climate or other factors can result in rapid changes in the species, whereby the species and the individual that cannot adapt to the changes quickly enough, they become extinct. And therefore, those that survive evolve into new species which are adapted to the new environmental conditions. Therefore, we can also have our fossil record that shows extinction of many species that once appeared millions of years ago. So I've already also included, I had also included some graphs that are also illustrating these processes or these evolution situation that we are talking about. So as you can see, I'm saying gradualism, we have got changes that are taking place over, we are saying very little changes are taking place there. And then we have got this graph, the graph that I've illustrated here. So what we must understand is that the constant level where the graph is horizontal, the horizontal part of the graph, it shows a time of of stable environment. Stable environment is shown. It shows a time of stable environment. And then when the graph accelerates, the stage of acceleration, which can be shown by a movement, as is being shown here, it is showing rapidly changing environment. Rapidly changing environment is shown by these stages, which I can mark as what? As A, as B, as C. They are showing A, B, C are points which are showing changing changing environment. A, B, C, rapidly changing environment. And then I can put this as D, 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 D can be shown as stable environment or periods of no change. Periods of no change. That can be shown as what? As this. This is called what? These graphs we are saying gradualism. This is gradualism. And then we also have punctuated equilibrium, which can also be shown by what I'm saying. As you can also see that this is also, like I already showed you, to say this is what punctuated equilibrium. And also we have got what? We have got gradualism also, which is also shown on our what? On our gradualism, which is also shown in this respect. Gradualism and also punctuated what? Punctuated equilibrium. At the same time, we also have what? We have also our what? Our punctuated equilibrium. Our punctuated equilibrium. Our punctuated equilibrium here, which is A, and then this whole graph is showing punctuated equilibrium, and then we also have what? This is B, which is what? Gradualism. So class, please note that these graphs, note them. We are saying the first graph is what? Is punctuated equilibrium, which is showing periods of change, rapidly changing environment. And then when the stable environment is there, there is no change, where the organisms are just not changing. And then we would see also some changes that will take place, and then other times the environment becomes stable again. So these are the graphs that I've shown you in order for you to understand these different these different presentations that are being shown there. It is it is gradualism that is shown in this respect. Gradualism, which is shown versus versus punctuated equilibrium. So you can see these are short periods of change, microscopic changes that are taking place over, changes that are taking place over short periods of time. And then we are saying we have got long periods of time from there, from here, which we can say B to, from A to B, from A to B there, we are saying long periods of no change that are shown there. Long periods of no change that are shown in the graph there. So please, class, note these graphs, you will see them. And then one other last thing that I would want you to understand is that explain also why we can use insect as good example to study punctuated to study punctuated equilibrium. In terms of punctuated equilibrium, we always use the life cycle of life cycle of insects. Insects is a typical example. Is a typical example to use in this case. Is the typical example to use there. And then the question would come to say, why should we use, for example, a mosquito? Why should we use a mosquito in terms of explaining this? Why must we use, why must give reasons why we must use examples of mosquitoes in give reasons? The question would say, give reasons why, e.g., mosquitoes can be a good mosquito, can be a good example, can be a good example to study if to can be a good example to start this evolution. So one good thing is that the mosquito, this is because mosquitoes, they also have they reproduce quickly because one thing that must be understood is because one, mosquito reproduce reproduce they reproduce very fast. They reproduce very fast. Mosquito reproduce very fast. We can also say that they have short lifespan. They have a short lifespan. Also, mosquito can easily be kept in a laboratory, or insects can easily be kept in a laboratory. We can also either say that another thing is that they also have got the effect of changing environment can be seen quickly. Effect of changing environment uh, can be can be seen quickly. So, Classy, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that you have seen, you have understood, and also you have benefited from these graphs that I have presented to you here. I'm sure that you are able to understand and benefit quite a lot in them. Have a beautiful day, and please do not forget to share and also subscribe for our next presentation. Thank you and have a beautiful day.